Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday. I would say welcome to another no small talk Sunday, but today we are talking small and big at the same time. So it's always something for me to prepare these live streams. It's like going to school. Whatever I thought I knew about a subject, when I start researching it a little deeper to do one of these broadcasts to assemble the information together, I am down the rabbit hole. I'm telling you, it's an amazing experience. If you ever want to really learn something, I mean, this is ancient axiom. If you ever want to really learn something, then teach it. So some of the most, one of the distilled things that came out of researching what we're talking about today was there was a period of time when there was a revolution and a renaissance of consciousness, of the exploration about the deep nature of reality. In Italy and in the Greek islands, the arising of this formed a number of different schools of thought, mystery schools of thought. Pythagoras started out in Italy and Croton and moved eventually to the island of Samos and set up his complete mystery school. But there was Aristotle and Plato. I mean, the biggest names that we've all heard of and that we've studied in school. And perhaps like me, in school, you're sort of learning somebody's name and maybe a picture of them. You have to memorize when they were born and what era of time they were in, and the basic one sentence, description of what their ideas were. That's pretty much it. You don't get into the deep study of Plato or read any of his works. The works of Plato, for God's sake, that was where he's the one who had a whole treatise on Atlantis. It was his description of Atlantis from ancient texts that he was aware of himself and he had studied, that he wrote about. That's pretty incredibly fascinating. The period of time that we're talking about today, the type, the idea of Zeno was from another school that arose during that period of time. And the ideas from that school were grappling with the basic nature of, reality in the cosmos and consciousness. It didn't seem to get the fanfare that the other luminaries did, like Plato and Aristotle and Socrates. So, now, this was the pre-Socrates era, so Socrates hadn't arisen yet. He was sort of next. And the whole idea of the Socratic school, where long-haired and long-bearded, wizened old ones with togas and white robes are holding open discourse as they strolled through the lavish grounds of marble and statues and colonnades and, Italian architecture at that period of time. And discussed the deepest issues of the day about the nature of reality, and had discourses and debates. And the Socratic school was a roving school. There were no classrooms. It was assembled, moving discourse. And in the discourse were friendly debates about the nature of reality, where there was no such thing as disrespecting another person who had a different idea than you did, that it was the true beginning of scientific discourse. When a scientist comes up with a new theory and works out the math of that theory as a possible explanation for the nature of reality or anything else, once they've completed it, they publish it in a peer-reviewed journal so that other peers of themselves with similar education, similar understandings of the realm that this person is exploring, they're all expected to specifically try to shoot holes in this theory. That's what a peer-reviewed means, that your peers are critiquing your work and trying to poke holes in it to see if you missed something or you got something wrong. And if they do find something that they can shoot a hole through, you go back to work and you explore that and you clean it up and you solve that problem and you republish. And now everybody looks and says, hey, that looks great to me, so let's all agree. This is sound idea. Next step is to put it to some form of scientific experimentation of some kind. And in many cases, the means to do so has not been invented yet. Einstein's famous ideas about, black holes and gravity waves was not discovered. You didn't have the instrumentation to prove that for another 15 years or 20 years. So all of a sudden, Einstein's idea has just been proved because we shot something into the atmosphere and did some kind of X-ray something, and all of a sudden what he had to say in his math was true. The peer-reviewed journals reviewed his math and said, this is sound. This sounds like a good idea. We're not in a position to test it yet, so it's on the shelf for now as a good idea. That is the way that true scientific discourse and conscious conversation should take place. That there's, as I've mentioned before, the need for the reinstitution of a healthy, skeptical spirituality. That things are not just taken on face value because somebody said so, and because the idea sounds like it's very alluring, and I'd love for that idea to be true. So many of the things that I see now being pushed and hawked and sold and discussed on the internet, where everybody is jumping on the bandwagon with no discriminative thought or attitude that even though this looks like it is a great idea, what's the backing? How did you come up with the idea? I mean, who says that 532 is a frequency for love? I mean, please tell me. That would be a fantastic thing to discover. What's the backing for that? Or dozens and dozens of other things that it's a great idea, and currently it's on the shelf of my mind until I can get something more that would satisfy me that this might have something real to it. So back in those days, the conscious, spiritualized, skeptical inquiry into the nature of reality and the nature of consciousness was a deep and long-lasting discourse at a certain period of time when it was an amazing period of time to be. I sort of feel like I should be, wearing a toga. Let my beard grow. After, what I've been spending the last few days delving into. So Today we talk about the quantum Zeno effect. And in the past, of course, the word quantum hadn't been invented or discovered yet. This was referred to as Zeno's paradox. But presently, quantum physics has made new discoveries that have proven the Zeno effect to be indeed true and one of the operating mechanisms in quantum physics, and also a mechanism that directly relates to quantum processing of neurons in the brain and consciousness itself. So the name Zeno is probably going to be becoming more and more prominent in the news, I would suspect. But we go all the way back to the 5th century BC. This is Italy, in the town of Elea. And by the way, down here at Croton is where the Pythagorean school began. This is where the discourses of Pythagoras in Croton were taking place, and he was making a giant name for himself. Eventually, it got so big that he moved from Italy off the coast of Greece on a little island called Samos and set up his school there. So he, people were tended to be called Pythagoras of Samos. People would be called where they were from. It would be Zeno of Elea. But this topographical kind of get yourself situated about where we are in the world back at the 5th century BC, right? Let's go back. Now, of course, it's ruins that you can still visit today. But back in the day, Elea was a thriving metropolis and the seat of some of the deepest discussions and interrogations of the nature of reality and the nature of consciousness itself in grand discourses by some of the most famous people you've ever read about. But this is where Zeno arose in this era. And during that period of time, a number of great schools of thought were arising. Plato, Pythagoras, Aristotle. This is the pre-Socrates era. So, but these guys were no slouches. And arising out of these schools came the Socratic school, which became extremely famous. Because Socrates saw what was going on here as a sort of a free-for-all. And in the Socratic school, he invited all these schools, all these fields of thought to come to one place to create a grand discourse, a grand single place where all the great minds could come together and debate these issues in a free and friendly discourse. Not the kind of thing that we have today. If you don't agree with my idea, somehow I get pissed off at you. Things are more polarized than any semblance of what you could imagine it would be like without the antagonism of people all engaged in trying to find the secrets of the truth together and bouncing ideas around. And this became the living peer review group where you put your idea out and everybody tries to shoot holes in it, and they bring their idea out and everybody tries to shoot holes in it. It's a friendly discourse because you're all on the same team trying to find the answer to the greatest secrets of consciousness and the universe that existed, right? Plato, the great discourses of Plato, mind-blowing. I mean, amazing stuff, these people. Aristotle. Just imagine what it would have been like to be around these people and hear what they had to say and be in the middle of these discourses where the grand ideas that we're all familiar with now were being hashed out from the very beginning. Truly amazing. The sort of atmosphere of camaraderie and seekers of truth that were devoted their lives to the greatest questions of the day, where everyone around you in the whole environment of the cities were participating in this open discourse. Great concept that is. I'm reading about all this stuff and yearning for those times, except I would want to have, electricity and lights and a bathroom and a shower. Remember, this was pre-Socratic times, but Plato and Aristotle and Zeno and all the rest, it's a mind-blowing period. Great luminaries of consciousness. Plato, for God's sake, unbelievable. The people at this period of time. Pythagoras himself, Pythagoras of Samos. The Pythagorean Mystery School in Samos, where incredible discourses were taking place and experimentation was taking place. He had a research lab there. They were building instruments. They built the monochord and did experiments with the sympathetic resonance and did mathematical calculations that came up with the triangle and the hypotenuse and major mathematical formulas that explain the geometry of reality. Incredible. And then there was the Eleatic School, which most of us haven't heard of. The Eleatic School, which Zeno was part of. The great period of time where Zeno, basically the Eleatic School was 4 main characters. 2 were the main characters. The Eleatic School was started by this guy, Parmenides. So probably haven't heard of his name either, but Parmenides and Zeno were the 2 main founders and the 2 main consciousnesses that were fleshing out new amazing ideas about the nature of reality, and teaching them in this school, which attracted many followers. The Eleatic School of Philosophy, the Eleatics were a pre-Socratic school of philosophy founded by Parmenides in the early 5th century BC in the ancient town of Elea. Other members of the school included Zeno of Elea and Melissus of Samos, Pythagoras. So this guy was from the Pythagorean school and was associated with that, and now he's with these guys. And Xenophanes, sometimes included in this list. Basically 2 and a third who had some minor contributions, and Xenophanes, who was part of that group. So the Eleatic school of thought trusted facts and reason more than what appears to follow from our senses. The senses could be a trick, that you could be fooled by your senses. There was a deeper level of reality than what you think it is with your sensory information. That was this school and more. Xenophanes, sort of the least of them, Greek philosopher and poet of ancient Greece, was born in 570 BC, famous for his work on ethics and politics. He wrote many poems. Many of these philosophers wrote their ideas down in poem form, not prose, which is kind of interesting, including one that describes what he believes to be the origin of God. He's the first great thinker in a long line of Western thinkers who have used rational inquiry to think about the whole of reality. This is deductive reasoning. This is the kind of stuff that Einstein was doing. You know, the formula, one of the most, actually the most profound formula ever, E equals mc squared, all came from some dream that Einstein had where he was riding on a sunbeam and wondering what things look like if you were traveling at the speed of light. So this is sort of Sherlock Holmesian type of using your mind to penetrate into the nature of reality and using mathematics to flesh those ideas out to see if they hold water. Melissus of Samos, he was a Greek philosopher, so he came from Greece, from the island of Samos, where Pythagoras was. Considered the third great proponent of the philosophy's claims that reality is one, after Parmenides. That was Parmenides' ideas, that there is only one thing in the universe, that it's an illusion that there are many things. But he was a great proponent of this idea after Parmenides and Zeno of Elea. Melissus primarily restated Parmenides' vision, but expanded on it, claiming reality is limitless. So it means that there's only one thing in the universe and it goes forever. And finally, we arrive at Zeno of Elea, one of the great thinkers. And the depth of his understanding is only just now becoming apparent after all these, thousands of years in modern quantum physics. These two, Parmenides and Zeno, were basically the Eleatic mystery school. Their discourses together were famous. They spent hours and days and weeks and months and years in deep discourse with one another, shooting ideas back and forth, trying to shoot holes in one another's ideas to skim the dross off, to reveal the molten core of what really is real about reality. Their famous discourses were written about by other schools, the great discourses of these two. So, Zeno of Elea. So what were these ideas that he was talking about that we're doing this whole broadcast on? What's so important about it? Why has it's arisen back in my newsfeed, and that's what keyed me in. One of my newsfeed pieces, the Zeno paradox and the Zeno effect, has just been discovered in quantum physics and confirmed. Zeno of Elea, 490 to 430 BC, pre-Socratic Greek philosopher, student of Parmenides, and one of the Eleatics. Born in Elea, Zeno defended his instructor's belief in monism, the idea that only one single entity exists that makes up all of reality. He rejected the existence of space, time, and motion, and to disprove these concepts, he developed a series of paradoxes to demonstrate why they were impossible. Through his original writings, although his original writings are lost, subsequent descriptions by Plato, Aristotle, and others have allowed his ideas to move forward in time. Otherwise, they would have been lost. But there was many of the most powerful people in the world talking about his ideas. So what are these Zeno's paradoxes that he came up with to illustrate his point? The first one that is most famous is the Achilles and tortoise paradox. Imagine Achilles, who is the son of a god who could run extremely fast, a great athlete and a great warrior, super speedy hero, racing a tortoise, which is, well, not so speedy. Zeno tells us that the tortoise gets to start the race a bit ahead, but he says Achilles will never catch up with him. Why? Because whenever Achilles reaches the spot where the tortoise was a second ago, the tortoise has moved a tiny bit ahead. So there's always a new spot Achilles has to reach, and this goes on forever. This is an example of Zeno's paradox because it uses the idea of infinite division of space and time to argue that movement isn't possible, which messes with common sense. Now, this all begins to make sense when you start to talk about quantum reality, not the macro reality that we are out here. So that the whole idea of Achilles never being able to quite reach the tortoise, and the reason is because if the tortoise is at the end of this line over here, if the tortoise is at the end of this line, then in order to get there, he has to reach, halfway to get there. It's going to take a certain amount of time. Then it's going to take halfway to get from there another amount of time, and half to get to there it's like a half-life. Each place is 1/2 and 1/2 and 1/2 and 1/2, and they keep getting smaller. 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, 1/64, 1/28. It keeps going and going, and these get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And it would take an infinite number of these to finally reach this point. That's what Zeno was talking about, is that in order for me to get from here to there, I first of all have to get halfway there. And then from this halfway point, for me to get to there, I have to also go halfway to that point, and halfway to that point, and halfway to that point, on and on and on and on forever. Technically, the current proof of Zeno's ideas in quantum physics is indicating to us that, just from the standpoint, let's say that what is going on in a quantum realm? In other words, this dream that we're in, this hyperdimensional, holographic, fractalized sort of cosmic video game where we all have chosen avatars and have designed our bodies, and we're all in here interacting together. It seems very real because I can touch you, and I can touch myself, and I can grab a glass, I can grab a cup, and my hand doesn't go through the cup, it stops, and I can feel something here. But I know that the act of me here wanting to grab this cup handle, right, between my hand and the cup handle is a certain distance. And first I have to get half that distance to get there. Then I have to go half the remaining distance, half the remaining distance, half the remaining distance forever. So actually, this cup handle is an infinite distance away from my hand. That's pure Zeno. When I get to the point where it appears that I'm touching, actually I'm now within the sphere of the fact that the atoms that make up my hand, the atoms that make up my finger, and the atoms that make up the cup, have charges, positive and negative charges, and the positive charges on the inside of the nucleus, the proton, positive charged, and the electron cloud, the electron field, probability field of where the electron might be in any given moment is negative charged. And that means that all the atoms in the universe, when they get close enough to each other, their little negative charge and negative charges are repelling each other, just like a pair of strong magnets, except the amount of negative charge in the electron field of an atom is the most powerful thing in the universe. That is such an unimaginable, powerful magnet charge of repelling that nothing ever touches. What I'm feeling is the repelling force of the negatively charged electron field around the atoms that make up this cup and the atoms that make up my finger. So even though I get to a point where it appears that Achilles actually caught up with the turtle, there's still an infinite number of divisions between where I come within the force field of the electron cloud, which is fuzzy. There's no like actual edge to it. It's a field. It's like it's like Jupiter. It's a giant gas planet. There's nothing solid there. It's all gas. So when you get to Jupiter, far enough away, it looks like it's got an edge. But when you get closer and closer, you find out there's no edge at all. It's just you're going into some clouds, and those clouds are getting denser and denser and denser. And pretty soon, the weight of all those clouds, because Jupiter is gigantic, the weight of all those clouds is crushing your ship. You know, if in a hypothetical world, if you could go in a ship that couldn't be crunched, then you would, get denser and denser clouds. The clouds would get denser until pretty soon they're like a sea. And then the sea would get denser and denser and denser until it's a solid. But it's not a solid. It's this amorphous kind of something or other that's impossible to describe. That's my fingertip and this cup. There's an electron field, just like the atmosphere of Jupiter. And I'm coming and I'm getting closer and closer into this field until I start to get resistance. And the resistance builds up and builds up and builds up as I move a half of the distance and a half of the distance and a half of the distance and a half of the distance. It gets stronger and stronger and stronger until finally the repulsive force is working against me and I can't go any further because the repulsive forces are building up so much pressure that I can't go any further to actually make that touch. None of us have ever, in all of our existence, touched anything. All that's happening is the mingling of like electromagnetic fields that are repelling each other from the electron clouds of the atoms that make everything that we see. Zeno's arrow paradox. So think about shooting an arrow. For the arrow to move, it has to go from one point to the next, right? But Zeno throws a curveball. He says, if you freeze time for a moment, take a snapshot of that movie, the arrow can't be moving because it's stuck in that frozen slice of time. If all of time is made up of these frozen moments, frames in a movie, so to speak, and the arrow isn't moving in any of these single frames, it must always be still. Seems weird, right? The arrow is an example of Zeno's paradox, as it suggests a series of moments that, although they seem to make sense on their own, don't add up to allow for motion when put together. Now, once again, this flies in the face of reason in this macro world, but in the quantum realm that this is all based on, these ideas is exactly how the whole system works. This idea that, go back here, we're shooting this arrow. And so we've got two things going at once. We've got Achilles and the tortoise that first we'll have to go half the distance, and then we have to go half of that distance and half of that distance and half of that distance forever and never quite get there until we enter into the repulsive fields of the atoms themselves that make up the target. But on the other hand, if I take a picture of this arrow when it's here, well, so the arrow at half one, I stop the movie and I look at a single frame of that arrow. It's standing still. Every frame, I stop the movie and look at that single frame, the arrow is not moving. The arrow is not moving, the arrow is not moving, the arrow is not moving. And I could take 100,000 little snapshots and pull them out of the movie at any place in time, and the arrow is not moving, it's standing still. So a movie with 24 frames per second, it means we have 24 still pictures of the arrow that is not moving. But in reality, it's an infinite number of frames, right? So it sort of explodes your brain because the arrow is moving, but the frame rate of the movie that we're in is an infinite number of frame rates per second. And only consciousness itself has the ability to penetrate into that and pull one slice out and look at that arrow using the faculty of conscious imagination, which is what Einstein did to come up with E equals mc squared. The mind has the possibility of penetrating into the deepest secrets of the universe through the power of imagination. The quantum Zeno effect, also known as the Turing paradox. Remember, Turing is the guy who invented the first computer and saved all of us in World War II by creating a computer that could, crack the code of a German encoding device so that we could all of a sudden listen to everything the Germans were saying to each other and win the war. There was a whole movie about that, a good movie, by the way. Quantum Zeno effect is a feature of quantum mechanical systems allowing a particle's time evolution to be slowed down by measuring it frequently enough with respect to some chosen measurement setting. Time itself slowed down by the process of observation of quantum processes. That, I guess the mind-blowing thing about this is that the time dilation effect is explained by the Zeno paradox, the Zeno effect. A quantum Zeno effect means that when I am deeply focused on something that is of great interest to me, then time seems to stand still. And I can't believe that I've been involved in all of this for 12 hours. My experience with this broadcast, right? I spent all day into the night putting this together. Why? Because, okay, I've got to do my broadcast. I've got to put it together. I've got to spend some time putting this broadcast because I've got a schedule. People are going to be waiting. I love you guys. My favorite thing in the world to do is blow people's minds, including my own. So if I can successfully blow my own mind, then I know that you guys will be satisfied with what I come up with, right? So I'm in the process, and when I put one of these things together, of trying to figure out a cool way to blow my mind with new information about the nature of reality that is extending my experience and my understanding at a level that I didn't have before because I didn't do this search. And as soon as I search any topic, I'm in Alice in Wonderland again. I realize how little I know. When I really get into it and start looking at it, it blows your mind. And in that space, when you're really into it and it's really blowing your mind, time stands still. My focus is observing a quantum process and slowing that process down. Time is shifting by my conscious attention. That's pretty profound, incredible shit. And that was Zeno. That was his idea. The concept that we can freeze time with consciousness, with conscious attention, and show measurable slowing of time by conscious attention. Quantum Zeno effect. System can't change while you're watching it. This is very powerful stuff that we already know to be true in quantum physics. One of the weirdo paradoxes of quantum physics is this whole, Heisenberg principle of you can't measure a thing's location and its speed at the same time. And the double slit experiment, where when a beam of photons is being shot through a board with two slits in it, on the opposite side you should see photons going through the two slits and creating two panels of horizontal white lines where the photons are going through the two slits. Right? Now, that's the way it looks when you're looking at the experiment. But when you look away from the experiment, it shifts, because now the light particles are acting like a wave, and a wave is going through those two slits, and when it comes out, when the water comes out the other end, it creates ripple patterns that interfere with each other, and those interference patterns show up as multiple lines. So as soon as I turn around and take a look, the wave function collapses into particles, and the particles line up through the two slits and create two lines. I look away, there's many lines. I look back, there's two lines. This is classic Zeno stuff here. This is a system can't change while you're watching it. It is going to be a particle. It collapses the wave into a particle stream that makes things look like a movie with pixels, particles. This whole system is made up of pixels on a computer screen, except it's a three-dimensional, hyperdimensional computer screen, and the pixels are smaller than the Planck length, the smallest of the smallest of the small, so you can't see through the movie. You can't touch through the movie. You can't pinch yourself to wake up, because I'm getting dream pain with dream fingers. So the conundrum is you can freeze a quantum state as long as you can maintain your attention on that state, right? If you could hypothetically keep your attention 100% focused, then the particle would freeze in place and never change and never move, and time and space would cease to exist. However, there is blinking, wandering of your attention. Pretty soon you get bored doing that. You're looking at the stupid quantum box so that the particle doesn't change, but next thing you know, your mind is drifting off into remembering what you did yesterday or anticipating what you got to do next, and the particle begins to move. It's an impossible conundrum, really. But it begins to pull the curtain back on the sort of mind-boggling kind of interaction. Once again, it's the interaction between consciousness and attention and focus, and what is being manifest in the universe for me to experience. We are not consciousness in a universe observing it. We are consciousness creating the universe that we experience, moment by moment by moment, when those moments are an infinite number of moments within each moment, right? Quantum physics has reopened Zeno's paradoxes. For thousands of years, scholars pondered the question of how anything can move in our world. The problem seemed to have been solved until the development of quantum mechanics. And then all of a sudden, all the cards were in the air again, and nobody knew what the heck was going on or how to explain it. Cornell Chronicle. Zeno effect verified. Atoms won't move while you watch. One of the oddest predictions of quantum theory, that a system can't change while you're watching it, has been confirmed in an experiment by Cornell physicists. Their work opens the door to a fundamentally new method to control and manipulate the quantum states of atoms, and could lead to new kinds of sensors. And actually, this article goes on, it could be the secret that finally solves quantum computing once and for all. All based, back in the 5th century BC, 500 years before Christ, right? 3,000 years ago plus. Amazing. Here we go, NIH PubMed articles, Zeno's paradoxes in decision making. Because observation is a process of consciousness, and consciousness is reflected in brain activity, and brain activity has quantum processes going on. All of this is swirling around where I pay my attention causes quantum effects based on the Zeno effect that slows time and changes quantum processes themselves depending on where my consciousness goes. Classical probability theory has been influential in modeling decision processes, despite empirical findings that have been persistently paradoxical from classical perspectives. Paradoxical from classical perspectives means it doesn't make sense in this macro world. It makes perfect sense in the quantum world. One unique feature is the collapse postulate, which entails that measurements, or in decision-making, judgments reset the state to be consistent with the measured outcome. That my decisions and my judgments change reality to agree with what my judgment is and what my decision is. That's pretty heavy-duty stuff. If there is quantum structure in cognition, in consciousness, then there has to be evidence for the collapse postulate. A priori prediction is that opinion change will be slowed down under idealized conditions, frozen by continuous judgments. That my judgments, my observations, my decision-making will cause a freezing of conditions in a quantum field, so it can't change. If I can keep up continuous observations and, quote, judgments. In physics, this is the quantum Zeno effect. We demonstrate a quantum Zeno effect in decision-making in humans, and so provide evidence that advocates the use of quantum principles in decision theory, at least in some cases. Decision theory. This is where the Zeno effect in the quantum field touches consciousness itself, and how consciousness and where it's directing its attention changes everything it sees from the quantum Zeno effect. That we tend to slow time with anything we look at or pay attention to and change the quantum processes going on there when consciousness and the quantum world interact together, according to the Zeno effect. Physicists demonstrate the weeping angel effect. Here we go down the rabbit hole. Physicists from Cornell University have demonstrated experimentally that matter can be quantum locked or frozen in place with repetitive, rapid measurements. In their paper, recently published in the Physical Review Letters, the team explains how the quantum Zeno effect can restrict the quantum tunneling of confined particles. Now, what is the weeping angel effect, you might ask? An episode from Doctor Who. So, I'm assuming that the majority of you have heard of Doctor Who and know what Doctor Who is. Back in the 70s, when I was going to chiropractic college in Davenport, Iowa. So I graduated in 1980. So it was through the late 70s until I graduated that the two things that kept me sane in Davenport, Iowa, we used to call it Davin Pit. First winter I was there, the temperatures dropped to 30 below zero with a wind chill of 50 below zero. And the evening news was talking about instructions how to breathe if you wanted to go outdoors. Saturday Night Live and Doctor Who was the secret of my sanity. So I watched, 4 years of Doctor Who to keep me sane. Doctor Who was a Time Lord, by the way, who could manipulate time, very close to the Zeno idea. And in one of these episodes was the Doctor Who Weeping Angels episode. He finds himself in a time continuum where there are these stone statues all around with these angels covering their eyes. Don't Blink, the Quantum Zeno Effect, and the Weeping Angels. If you are a Doctor Who fan, you probably have already familiar with the Weeping Angels. If you're not, head to Netflix immediately and start with season 1 of the 2005 reboot. This article will still be here when you emerge bleary-eyed a week later after the ensuing binge. Trust me, it's worth it. For the still uninitiated, however, the Weeping Angels are a race of aliens in the Doctor Who universe that are described as quantum locked. When you are looking at them, they appear as stone angels, the kind you might see often around Gothic architecture. The second you look away, however, they are free to move, able to exist in their own natural state. Upon contact, they can either snap your neck, killing you instantly, or send you back into the past, feeding on the potential energy of the life in the present you could have lived. Doctor Who. So, you know what? It's very similar to the idea that we played as a kid. It was called red light, green light, right? So one of the kids, so you've got, 10 kids. One of them is chosen. They're going to be the weeping angel. So they're going to stand, cover their eyes, just like the weeping angel. And while their eyes are covered, you're all free to move to come. And you have to be a certain distance away. And as long as my eyes are uncovered, you're frozen. That's the Zeno effect. You are frozen when I'm watching. But as soon as I cover my eyes, then you're all free to move and you all start inching forward to see if you can touch me. Because if you can touch me, then I lose and you win. And then you get to be the angel. So I cover my eyes and I bring them down at some point that I decide. And if I see any of you moving still, then you're out and you have to go sit down. So when I cover my eyes, you have to be very careful in how you move so that when I uncover my eyes, that there's no apparent motion at all. I cover my eyes, I uncover them, everybody's closer. I cover my eyes, I open them, everybody's closer, right? That's what this was all about. It was based on this sort of idea. Weeping angel atoms and quantum systems won't move if you're looking at them. In a new quantum theory breakthrough, researchers have finally proven the idea that a system can't change while you're watching it. This new research could open the door for the creation of new sensors and even bring us closer to quantum computing by allowing us to control and manipulate the quantum states of atoms. Cornell University again. The phenomenon has been compared to the weeping angels from the popular television show Doctor Who. The characters are strange beings that appear as statues when observed, but are able to move when nobody is watching, similar to what occurs in the atoms of a quantum system. All the atoms in the universe are weeping angels. Flippin' amazing, really. It's like, what if you think this is all about? You're wrong. The whole concept of weeping angels at a quantum field level. The reality is one thing when you're looking, and it's something else completely when you're not. Amazing. Now, of course, you can buy a Doctor Who weeping angel. So if you're so inclined, go for it. The official 50th anniversary annual weeping angel from Doctor Who's episode of Weeping Angels. I think every quantum physicist who knows anything about all this stuff should have one of these on their lab shelf. I may even get one for myself, just to remind me of this episode. But how does all this quantum locking come back to neuroscience? Now, that's the question that I had. And here I'm finding the answer, right? What does this mean about mindfulness and meditation and conscious focusing? In particular, for me, it brings back the whole central premise of Gurdjieff's work on yourself, right? Work on yourself with self-observation. That I am here in the world experiencing things. You are sitting right now looking at the screen, listening to me and seeing these cool pictures I put up, right? And at any given moment in time, in the midst of whatever it is that you're doing and experiencing, you have the possibility of remembering that now would be the perfect time and possibility for me to observe myself observing what I'm observing. That I am watching this broadcast, but now all of a sudden I am observing myself watching this broadcast. That something has separated out of my consciousness. That all of a sudden I am now aware that I am looking out of my own eyes, participating in this experience that I'm having. Very similar to the idea of every minute Zen, that no matter what I'm doing in life, there is a part of my consciousness that is in full lotus position, floating 3 feet above and behind me, calmly and objectively observing everything that I am and how I move and how I think and all the different aspects of me that make me a unique thing in the universe. I am quietly observing this. Now, because of the Zeno effect, this has a whole different meaning, right? This act of self-observation, of self-awareness, that I am aware that I am having some experience. I'm aware I'm sitting in front of a computer screen watching Dr. Jeff speak. I'm challenging everyone right this very second. Is the only time in the whole universe, right now, is the only time you ever will have to wake up, and here it is. Don't let it pass. Watch yourself watching the screen right now, this very second. Wake yourself up. Separate consciousness out. Observe yourself existing right this very second now. A moment from now will be a new moment. Present moment is the only time you can do this. Don't put it off till tomorrow. Don't put it off until a hypersecond from now. How does all this quantum locking come back to neuroscience and to cells firing and wiring together, for that matter? According to a new theory floating around that combines both quantum mechanics and cognitive neuroscience, the determination of neural circuit formation depends entirely on the quantum Zeno effect. The way the effect is achieved in the brain isn't through being camera shy like uranium, but instead through simply being able to focus one's attention. As the theory states, the mental act of focusing attention can stabilize the brain circuits that are associated with whatever one is focusing on. So, if you were to receive a prick on your finger and you were then to focus all your attention on it, the current state of your brain at that time would be maintained in order to allow you to interpret the signaling associated with that event. Thus, in terms of promoting Hebbian learning, the more you're able to direct your attention to specific stimuli, the more readily all the neurons involved in this current response to that stimuli will be able to fire and synapse to one another, thus promoting the strengthening and solidifying of specific neurocircuits. This is meaning that you can consciously, through where your attention goes, manipulate neuroplasticity and grow pathways in your brain for anything you want, right? Music, learning, meditation, the flow state. Fascinating. While this model is definitely not without its holes, the quantum Zeno hypothesis does provide a very interesting way to consider how the brain may handle bouts of conscious learning or self-directed plasticity, and is able to stabilize certain synaptic pathways. If anything, it hopefully provides us with a more magical interpretation of the brain and how it completes its many whimsical tasks. Fascinating. Fascinating. The more you learn about this whole thing, the more magical the whole thing gets. The more Alice in Wonderland, through the looking glass, my conscious attention can grow brain pathways for anything I want. It would behoove me to focus my attention on all the good stuff, because I will burn those pathways and it will make it easier for me in the future to focus my attention on more and more and more good stuff. So me consciously deciding that I am going to prune my attention away from negative influences in my life and fill my conscious attention with good things in my life, abundance and love and health. I'm literally burning quantum pathways in reality itself and in my brain to bring more and more of that to me. I'm facilitating and growing the pathways that allow more and more of that to flow. It's like working a muscle. The body becomes more responsive to building up roadways and pathways to make that particular type of thing happen. Intermediate judgments inhibit belief updating. Zeno's paradox in decision making. So let's fill our mind with angels right now. I want to remove the residue of the stone angels, the weeping angel. Doctor Who sort of, any sort of negative connotations that may come from angels is now going to be wiped out of your brain. We're going to focus our attention and create a Zeno effect in the pathways of our brain and fill our expectations and our focus and our minds on the most positive images of angels that we can, and wipe the slate clean and replace it with a new model. Angels, let's go back in time, more innocent, more in touch, more innocent, more in touch. The part of ourselves that we're all trying to get to awaken the wonder of the child within us, who's never seen anything in the reality before, who's got questions like, how come people have fingers? Why is grass green? Why is the sky blue? This is the part inside each of us that we want to keep alive and healthy. Feed this part. Keep the wonder part big, huge, and alive. Focus your attention there and burn those pathways. 2,500 years later, Zeno's arrow paradox finally makes sense. The Eleatic School of philosophy, which Zeno brilliantly defended, was right. So was Werner Heisenberg when he said, "A path comes into existence only when you observe it. There is neither time nor motion without life. Reality is not there, with definitive properties waiting to be discovered, but actually comes into being depending upon the actions of the observer." Deep and heavy stuff. Inside consciousness itself is the creation of reality. If you want something you have never had, you must be willing to do something you have never done. Thomas Jefferson, for God's sake. Wow. Do something you have never done. Pull out all the stops. Let it all be free. When the observer becomes the observed, know that you have arrived. Krishnamurti. When the observer has become observed, you have arrived. Observe, and in that observation there is neither the observer nor the observed. There is only observation taking place. Which begs the question of, if I turn my consciousness inward to myself, my attention and my focus becomes the depths of my own consciousness. What is the Zeno effect doing at that moment? That I, in focusing on myself, self-observation, reaches a place in myself where I freeze time and space. And freezing time and space is before time, is a present moment. My concentration focused on my own existence expands the present moment into a timeless space inside of myself. Werner Heisenberg, separation of the observer from the phenomenon to be observed is no longer possible. No longer possible to separate the observer and the phenomena which is being observed. It is all one. Classic, straight from the school that Zeno was part of. The idea that there is only one thing in the universe. There is not many things, there's one thing. And the fact that it looks like there's many things is a complete illusion. And my consciousness, like a searchlight, can freeze the movie any place I look and expand the present moment and slow down time. That's pretty profound stuff. Separation of the observer from the phenomenon to be observed is no longer possible. Time and space stop. Definitions between things fall away. All is experienced as one. Amazing. You know, it's the Zeno effect, originally a concept in quantum physics, describes how the act of observations can seemingly freeze the state of a quantum system. When applied to self-awareness, meditation, and mindfulness, this idea takes on a metaphorical significance. In these practices, the act of observing one's thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations with focused attention, much like a quantum system being observed, can lead to a state of heightened awareness and presence. Just as the Zeno effect suggests that continuous observation can prevent change in a quantum state, mindfulness and meditation can stabilize the mind, preventing it from being swept away by habitual patterns of thought and emotion. This allows individuals to remain present, experience stillness, and potentially achieve a deeper understanding of themselves and their mental processes. In essence, the Zeno effect can be seen as a metaphor for the power of sustained attention in meditation and mindfulness, where the act of observation itself becomes a transformational tool for cultivating self-awareness and inner peace. In the brain, neurons communicate through chemical electrical signals, which involve complex interactions of particles at the quantum level. The Zeno effect implies that if consciousness, an observer, continuously monitors or focuses on certain neural processes, it might affect the state and behavior of those particles, potentially stabilizing or altering neuroactivity. This concept opens up intriguing possibilities in the study of consciousness, suggesting that the mind's focus and attention could have a direct, quantifiable impact on brain function at the quantum level. This might explain how practices like meditation and mindfulness can influence mental states, emotions, and cognitive processes. And with that, here we are. So now that we have the searchlight of focused observation of a large group of people who are here right now, and we're all going to be doing this process where we link our consciousnesses together to be one giant conscious searchlight, I propose that where that searchlight focuses its attention is on us as a group, that we're in this together right now, and that we are all deeply affecting each other's lives and existence because we're entangling our consciousnesses together. And so therefore, those of us who are in need with their health, or with their abundance, or with love, the three big ones, those of us who are in need have a huge conscious family that we can now rely on. And that family has power. So if the searchlight of consciousness of our observation is now on this family, who are all going to link their brainwaves together now, let's spend some time putting out into the field of each other a pressure wave that clears the field for anyone who is in need with their health or with their abundance or with their love. Let's help to put focus of this group on us, to help us, because we're going to have to be more and more and more clear in our field in order to change reality itself by mind linking together. So today we focus on us as a family and a spiritual group to help one another out through the power of numbers. And with that, we begin. Thank you, Aura, for being here. It's my great joy and pleasure to be here with you every week. Just a reminder, through Discord, the group that we have together in Discord, you can ask questions. Just a reminder, I am going to be putting on a major series of workshops. So if any of you are interested, contact either Shay or Austin, either through the website, that's Shay at neuroacoustic.com, or just mention it in Discord and we'll give you the information. Additionally, it is possible for anyone to become a practitioner of this system, the biotuning system that I talk about periodically. Once again, talk to Shay about what the details of that would be if you wanted to try to change your life and to do something with great meaning and help people and make a living at it. Meantime, I'm going to keep this channel open for another 30 minutes, and then we'll switch over to Discord. So peace and joy and love and blessings to everyone. Until next time, I'll see you next Sunday.